like best and, try and look at, why and what the relationship was with gender. And she came up with this excerpt from Blasphemy. And it was a very daring excerpt where the exploiter actually salts the woman. And the critique that she presented, so she completely changed my mindset, my stereotyping of women in hijab, and I realized what a brave, courageous woman she was and what wonderful contribution she could make to women empowerment. I'm getting this time out from Tina, but I'm still going to take about 20 seconds, being her teacher in Kinnaird. Tina, I think it's important because I want to take this discussion further and just want to share it because I think the questions will come. Now at the individual level, okay, you go through a transformation. What does it mean in terms of Pakistani, being a part of a Pakistani populace or a citizen of Pakistan? This is a very important question. And I think we've got some answers in the opening session. BSS is the private sector. It's doing a wonderful job, and I'm a part of the teacher education setup. But how are we going to empower the average Pakistani teacher? And I think that's a challenge that we'll talk about later in the question answer session. And I think now Tina must be getting fed up of me, so I just stop. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabiha Mansoor. Everyone has so much to say, but we are so pushed to time because I want to have at least 20 minutes for contributions from the audience as well. Dr. Shamim, if you'd like to share in 3 minutes your...
Okay. Mrs. Kasuri, I think, started us very well this morning by reminding us that we really do not know what the world will be like in 2035. Dennis has reminded us again that there are all those uncertainties around us. And we really don't have, I think what he said was, we don't have a textbook or a blueprint for what to do because we don't know what the world is going to look like. However, in this uncertain world, I think there's one thing that we're extremely certain about, and that is change. Change will happen. It does happen. 2035 will not be like 2010 or 2005 or whatever. So this is, I think, one thing that we need to remember. There's one certainty in our life, that is the world is changing and will continue to change. The second thing I'd like to talk about very quickly is that this concept of sustainability. Sustainability, and I'd like to unpack it a little in terms of education. As probably all of you know, it's a buzzword with development workers these days, and it's coming into education now. Sustainability, and it's not my redefinition, but Fullan and others have redefined it as continuous improvement. So we are not going to sustain things that you do once and then you sustain it. Sustainability actually means growth, development, and continuous development. Which brings me to my third point, which is innovation and diversity, which was Dennis Taylor's topic today. If we know that the world is changing, if we know that nothing can be sustained unless it continues to grow and it continues to develop, then what kind of teacher education do we need to, what kind of professional development do we need to think about? And here I'd like to just introduce, which I'm going to take further in my workshops later on today, the concept and the metaphor, which is the ecological metaphor. So instead of saying all teachers need this, all teachers learn in this way, we begin to think about what do teachers in disaster-hit areas need? Do they need more training in counseling students, the trauma-hit students? Do teachers in another setting need another kind of focus? What do these teachers need? And once we begin to think about that, because you see teachers, when we think about teachers and their knowledge and their learning, we need to think of teachers in a set of relationships, roles, relationships that go beyond their immediate environment, that go into the community, into their lives as teachers, into wives, into mothers, into other things. And unless we take all those interactions and relationships and consider them, we cannot have teacher training programs that would be useful to them. And somebody said earlier on, and I'm going to end with that, teachers will only learn if they have a compelling need to learn. And the compelling need will come from the learners and what the learners need to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Professor Goodwyn to share with us his impressions of our work this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. Is this working? Good, thank you. First of all, can I just say how much I agree with the importance of the theme that Dennis was talking about climate change and sustainable development. There could not be a more important theme for all of us to think about than that one. It's also a perfect example of a topic that cannot be treated individually or, as it were, by one discipline. As Dennis has pointed out, it's the perfect illustration of how interdisciplinarity is crucial to the future understanding of our young people. My university, I'm pleased to say, is quite active in this field, and my Institute of Education is one of the places where we are insisting that all our future teachers see themselves as teaching about climate change. Another point I'd like to make is that there are some schools, actually, that do what Dennis is talking about, do teach in this way. A famous example, in fact, was started in the 1960s in England, and it was a private school where the children designed their own curriculum. When the head teacher was asked how on earth he could justify charging parents for a school where the teachers apparently didn't know what the curriculum was, he said this: how can we tell our students how to live when actually we don't know how to live? That was a very honest point, wasn't it? It would seem, in a sense, to challenge all the knowledge that teachers have. Now, I think there'll be some people sitting in the audience who are thinking, well, what Dennis has done is pointed out that not only are our students going to be out of a job and lots of jobs, aren't we as teachers now out of a job? Because aren't we supposed to be these knowledgeable people who... So there's a sort of sense you think there's a paradox here, but there is no paradox here. What I think Dennis is saying, I hope he agrees with me, is that teachers must remain as knowledgeable as ever. It's not that we're going to be any less knowledgeable of our subject or of disciplines. It is that knowledge is going to be available to children in a rather different way. And the other bit of teacher knowledge, which is absolutely crucial, and perhaps especially so for those working in primary and secondary classrooms, is knowledge of children. Now that knowledge means that even in the kind of classroom that Dennis has just described, where there's lots and lots of activity and things going on, the teacher is still there influencing how children interact with each other. Now, expert teachers don't influence children by shouting at them. They don't influence children by punishing them. They influence them subtly, knowledgeably, through encouragement, through a smile, through all kinds of subtle ways that mean they feel like that joyful learning is going on and they're included in it. Take the obvious example where you have a child who is silent or awkward or in a bad mood. A knowledgeable teacher will change that child's attitude subtly and without them noticing it. So what am I saying? We're not out of a job. We're in a more interesting job, a more satisfying job, and a job where we share that joy between all of us in the classroom. Thank you.
I'm now going to ask Ali Raza to share with us his impressions of our topic.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tina, and thank you very much for such generous words. While going through the presentation, I think, first of all, I think it's a very, very important aspect of education that we are addressing here. First of all, I personally feel that teaching is not a profession. Teaching or a social scientist is essentially not a profession, it's a passion. So only people who are passionate about this should be involved with this passion. And I call all these teachers, I personally feel that they are the change agents. They are the ones who really bring about change in the society. Further to Dr. Fauiza's definition on sustainability, I think the important aspect of sustainability essentially is that the ownership has to come from the grassroots level. And the grassroots level in this particular case are the teachers. So the ownership of any teacher training or anything that you want to practice has to come from you. We at the regional offices or the administration of school, we can only create that enabling environment for you. But the change has to get initiated from your end, and we should be there to understand and create the enabling environment in that regard. And I believe that the trainings have to be very, very localized. I mean, I do admit the fact that all these teacher training programs, which Ms. Tina used to conduct or still conducts, more so the sustainability in these trainings will essentially come from the localized trainings which the school has to come up with, they have to understand the need, they have to do their own need analysis and come up with these trainings. So it has to be kind of localized, and because apparently the requirements of every school are different. I mean, they vary from city to city, they vary from campus to campus, so I think that's something we need to look into. And I think do I have more time?
Yes, you've got a minute.
All right. And further on, I feel that some of these forums like SPELT, they have a lot to contribute to the overall training of the teachers. And we must encourage such forums. There's a lot to learn from each other. There's a lot to learn from people like Dr. Sabiha and Dr. Fauiza, because I feel that the solutions they have for us are very, very localized. And I would rather have them come up with certain solutions for us, because they understand the dynamics of Pakistan, they understand the culture, and of course the regimental behavior we've been through, or we perhaps are going through. Coming back to an earlier observation, interestingly, I am somebody who's not working in my own profession. I mean, I am basically an engineer by profession. I have my master's in environment, and I'm working in the education sector. And interestingly, this is my third job, so I think I qualify in that regard. Because I started my career as a professional engineer, then I worked in the social development sector for a long time, and now I'm in the education sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ali Raza. I'm now going to ask Dennis, our presenter, to give his opinion on what the panelists have said. And you too, sir, have 3 minutes.
Change is certain. That is the message. And we heard from each of the panelists all sorts of key words that will lead to sustainable development in teacher education. Things like a compelling need, things like passion in grassroots efforts coming from teachers and administrators, things like interdisciplinarity and encouragement and ways to get students to be joyfully involved in learning. I think, as Andrew has pointed out, that we do have a stable, certain future for us as teachers, but it can be indeed more satisfying if we begin to see that our students create sustainable futures for themselves by learning how to learn.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to thank the panelists and Dennis Taylor for a very, very enlightening presentation. And the only message that I'm going to take away from here is that there is so much that we have to learn about learning. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.